bring you up to date on some of the things that are going on in the life of the church. We had the men's breakfast this morning, and one of the things, I talked a little bit about some of this stuff, but I also want you to make sure that you ask Rick about Crowley and about what Crowley is like and what he's excited about. He really is excited about going, and I call him a short timer now, and he keeps telling me, well, I've got to go do this at Crowley, and I got to go do that at Crowley, and I got, so we'll see him every once in a while. But he'll be around until the middle part of June, and then his last Sunday will be June the 14th. So I know we'll all celebrate his ministry here at that time. Also, let me let you know that Jennifer Pick, is the new associate pastor that will be coming, and she is younger. She's 33 and is married. Her husband is also clergy. He works at the conference office. His name is Todd. They have a 9-month-old boy named Drew, and so she's so excited she can hardly stand it. She's as excited to get here as Rick is to get to Crowley. So, Methodist ministers are kind of like the old fire horses that when they heard the alarm, they'd start to rear up. The alarm has gone off. So all the Methodist ministers are excited about where they're going and what they're doing, and I'm really glad I'm staying right here.
Amen.
Well, good, thank you. One vote for. So one of the things that happened here recently was we have 2 graduates on staff, 2 graduates from McMurray University on our staff. They got a letter from the president that talked to them about the 7 talking points and great things that we're having at McMurray University. And we read through it and we thought, man, that's a good idea. We ought to do something like that. And so we started to put down this was the staff, started to put down the great things we thought that we would want people to know about in the church, so that they could talk to others about them and that they would be informed about them as well. So we started to come up with our 7, and we couldn't keep it to 7. We had to go to 10, and actually we now have 12. And so it kind of grows, and we hope it even grows beyond that, because one of the things that you will see on the last page of the paper that I gave you is what is your favorite thing about FUMCG. And so that's what I got another one right here. Does anybody else need one? Debbie needed one. Thank you. We want you to tell us what are your favorite things about the church, and we'll talk about that a little bit at the end if I don't talk too long. So we'll see what happens. That's a big old if. That's right.
You buy lunch if you go too far.
Okay. Can you tell me where too far is? I'll know for sure.
We'll tell you when you're finished.
Yeah, I'll bet. Okay, so let's just jump into this. The first thing we came up with was the one we're carrying. And, I tell people about going to Rachel Olson's talk when we had that as the well, and the men were invited to go to the well along with you guys. And I'll be honest with you, I was listening to her, I'd already read the book, and I kind of went, this is kind of not really something I think I would want to do. And it was, I just thought it was a bunch of hooey, if you get my idea. So, but I thought, there are people in the church that this is important to, so if it's important to them, I ought to engage in it as well. And so I picked my one word, and last year it was the word release. And there were a lot of things going on in the church, and I was feeling some pressure things about that, and things in my family and so forth. And so I thought, I don't want to give everything to God. God wants me to be in partnership with God on these things. So I thought about the word partner, and I thought about other words. Finally, I just gave up and said, release is my word. And it's amazing how God used that word to help me through the year, and how that word morphed and was redefined over and over again, or the explanation of it just grew. And And it really was helpful. It helped me a lot. And so that, that which I thought was going to be hooey was not hooey. And so I've already picked my second word. My word for this year is enjoy. And I want to enjoy everything about ministry. I mean, you know, my professional ministry over the next couple of years will be coming to a close, and I just want to make sure I enjoy every minute of it. And there are going to be things that I miss, a few things I don't, but most everything I am going to miss, and so I really want to enjoy it, and I want to be reminded to do that, and so God's working on me with that word as well. Well, in the midst of that, the second thing that they did at the church where Rachel Olson attends was that they did the one word individually for a while, and then they decided they'd take one word as a church. So we initiated that here, and 93 words were suggested for us, and I took those 93 words, took those to the staff. They narrowed it down to 10, as Rachel Olson had suggested. She said do that as you're coming up with your individual words. I didn't have 10 options. I mean, I only had a few. So, but we did narrowed it down to 10, and then out of those 10, I took those 10 to the Compass team. The Compass team decided that the word would be caring. And the reason that they picked that word, one reason was they felt like that caring was our DNA. It's who we are. It's what I told you guys when I first came here, was what I saw was that there's a kindness gene in this church. And what had been held down for years was let go when Ken came here. And you remember Ken's famous phrase of God didn't wake you up in the middle of the night to give me something else to do. And it was an involvement that everybody would be involved in God's call in their life. And so this congregation started caring beyond the boundaries that you had had before. And so the idea that we are a caring congregation, but also that the church, I think, is under a new scrutiny of those who are outside the church, looking in and saying, are you really who you say you are? Are you really ministering the way that you are saying you're committed to ministering? And so I think that there's a fight for credibility in our society today, and I think that's some of the reason that the church has declined over the last several years, is that we've lost that credibility and we need to regain it. And one of the ways that we can regain that is by caring, as we say, we have been cared for. And so caring was the word for us, still is the word for us. And I can tell you that I was really worried that we would pick our one word and then we'd just kind of forget it, you know, busyness would take over and we'd shove it off to the side, but it hadn't happened that way at all. In fact, I was at the Council on Ministries meeting on Tuesday night, and at that meeting the first thing we talked about was how are we caring, what's going on, what have you seen, and that started many of the meetings that we're doing at the church. We've had it in sermons, we talk about it all the time, we have it in the e-news and so forth. So we're finding more and more ways that we are caring, and we are being encouraged in new ways to be caring as a congregation. So one of the things, for instance, is just the Ministry Safe thing. This is a huge program. I mean, Ministry Safe is as extensive a program on making sure that children and youth particularly are safe as you'll see anywhere. And for a church this size to do that program is a lot of work. And Patty Bandy has done a terrific job of that and have made it almost tolerable in the process, because you know we're having to do think of every volunteer, every staff person, every group that comes through here we have to have background checks, we have to have 3 references for those people. I mean, it's a huge undertaking. I just took my test this morning. I am 4% unsafe. I made a 96 on my on my test, and they are making fun of me downstairs because they all made 100. And I don't know, and it won't tell me which one I missed. So anyway, so I'm only 96% safe. You need to watch out for the 4%. But you knew that anyway. You thought it was higher than 4%. I think I ought to be pretty proud of 96. So caring is our one word. One of the ways that I think that we show our caring in magnificent ways is through the villages. And so number 2 couldn't be anything but the villages. The first village that we took on was the Kenyan Village, and I'm not sure we're communicating well enough what has been done in that interaction with that village. It's truly amazing what is happening there. We have the guest house that is pretty close to being completed. That is a 3-story building that our team of missionaries this June will be staying there for the first time. That's really exciting. And all of this has been done by this congregation. This is not one that's cooperative with other groups. This is something that this congregation has done in itself. And if you haven't seen pictures of that, you need to see the pictures, because this isn't like a little straw hut. I mean, this is a major building that is really nice and going to be functioning very, very well. Also, the dining hall in Timburi, that is our village per se. The guest house is in Meru, but in Timburi, the dining hall is there for the school, and it's kind of like a gym, a cafetorium. It's a multi-purpose room where the kids can get off the ground and eat, have the food cooked not in a little lean-to shed, but actually indoors. And so there's a kitchen, there's a gathering room, there's a stage, and again, we have been doing all of that, and we're really close to that, having that completed. The street kids, the glue kids that we've been working on, we think, well, we now have the grant proposal in. We think that it will be approved, and we'll be having, I think it's $58,000 to put from the Rotary Club grant to the glue kit project. So just adding more and more things that we will be doing. And what we hope there is that we're building a program that will be able to be redone in several different towns. Because what's happening in Meru is what's happening in every other major town. And Ed can tell you that let's see, that was in Nairobi that they did their work, that
Michelle's Made in the Streets.
Yeah, yeah. Michelle Crater went with a group that went to Nairobi, and there are literally thousands of kids in Nairobi that are homeless, that are on their own. And what some people don't realize is some of these kids are like little bitty kids. I mean, they're 1 and 2 years old. So you can only imagine what kind of vulnerabilities they have. So in Meru, we're working with a couple of 100 kids, and we hope to have all of them off the street within the next 3 years. And that would be terrific. And then we would be able to replicate that program in other towns. The Grapevine Village is doing really well, and you know, all of these villages are about relationships. How we build relationships, and how those relationships then enable us to do things that we had not been able to do before. Let me tell you, there's not a more mistrusting group than the folks that live over in Shady Oaks. And the reason they're mistrusting is because they've been abused and misused over the years. Many of them are not documented, so they're afraid people are going to send them back to Mexico or Guatemala or wherever they come from. Many of them, we found out, are like their water bills. The Shady Oaks Trailer Park is owned by a guy in Canada. The water bill, the city, they pay one water bill that the city gives them. Well, they give each individual trailer their water bill, but there's no rhyme or reason of how that fits what they're using. And so we were in a group the other day with folks in city government and so forth, and the people who brought their water bills at Shady Oaks for their trailer was 2 and 3 and 4 times as much as any of those who were living in 3,000 square foot houses were paying for their water bills. So that's the kind of thing that happens to them on a regular basis, and they can't complain because they're afraid they're going to be deported or whatever. We're working right now excuse me, decline. We're working on a trailer there now that burned out. If you go along Scribner, you'll see that there is a trailer right on the road that is totally burned. We have suggested to the management that we take that, we'll haul it off, we'll put a new trailer on there, and we will run a community center there for the folks in the Grapevine Village or Shady Oaks Trailer Park. The problem is they don't want us to do that because they're afraid we're going to gather people together and stand up for them and advocate for them, and so we're getting some pushback. We're hoping to get that figured out here in the next month or so. So we hope to be able to do that. That will go along with something else that I'll tell you about a little bit later. Costa Rica still continues to do well. Our trip leaves in 2 weeks to go to San Jose this time, not Las Juntas this time, but it's San Jose to the orphanage, and that is a wonderful ministry that the Zirkles have put together. And really, if you have a chance to go to see the orphanage, to be a part of that work there, it's worth the time. And this trip is one of those that's really, truly a work trip. That's why I'm not going. But there are trips that are really, we go to work, but also it's really about relationship building and being with the kids in the park and doing VBS for them and those kinds of things. So there are a lot of things that go on. This one's really one where they're going to be working manual labor. The Latvia Group, we just got through with having the Friends of Latvia here hosting that, and I can tell you that you would be proud of this church. People continue to tell me, man, this is just such a warm and hospitable place, and the folks that put that all together really did well. We had 16 Latvians who were here, along with people from Tennessee and Alabama and Ohio and New Jersey and so forth. And so that was really good. But then we had a time for the pastors from Latvia that Annette and Jesse Sal put together. It was a spiritual formation retreat for them. While they were there, we took their spouses and entertained them. And it was just really, really terrific. And so we're lucky to have that relationship with those folks.
John, how's the pastor that had the heart attack?
He's great. We had one of the pastors have a heart attack on the plane on the way over. And they checked him out when they got to Frankfurt. And then we didn't know for like 2 or 3 days. Finally, they told us that, yeah, we think you may have had a heart attack. We're going, what? And so we got him to a doctor, and he was feeling a whole lot better. We got him medications and so forth, so that now that he's back in Latvia, he probably has one of the, a clogged artery that he'll need to have a stent put in or something like that. But good grief, that was pretty crazy. But he's doing really well. His name is Giannis, and his wife is Anita. And Anita was the one who told me at Be Our Guest, this sweet, quiet young woman said, "You are always thinking of kindnesses," talking about our church. And she's exactly right.
She told me that she taught English in the school, but it's British English, which is different than Texas English.
We taught her a whole new language while she was here. Right. Yeah, it's funny when, like Bishop Catherine, when she was here, she always wants to go home and teach everybody how to say y'all. The people of the church, you know, of course the people are what the church is, and we have people in this church that are doing ministry all the time in the community, being a part of the community, and that's why I think how this church is seen has developed over the years, that it's individual members that are really helping us be a part of the community. The Ken Deem Service Above Self Award, several of our congregation have been nominated for that. Several of them have been awarded that, and then we have things like our youth growing up in the church, or our young adults growing up in the church. They are becoming pastors. They're becoming campus ministers. They're becoming youth directors. They're, you know, and you can name some of those folks that you've known over the years that now are in positions around the conference and around the world. We have missionaries that are flying in Mozambique. We have a youth minister. Where is Matt Reeser? He's at a church close by. I think it may be Flower Mound. Selah Fanau is a pastor in the conference. So we have folks doing all those different kinds of things. The leadership that we have in the congregation, some of that has been a little bit revolving over the last little bit, but a new missions coordinator, Debbie Price, has done terrific stuff. She continues to do more and more things, and you'll hear some things that she's been doing here pretty quickly. The family ministries, you know, we changed the way that we do youth ministry and children's ministry, and already in children's ministry particularly, we're up 1/3 more children than we were just a few months ago. And so that program is really beginning to develop. And Patty and Amy and Monica and Melissa, and then in youth with Michael, you know, that's just really a great team of people, and the enthusiasm and the energy is pretty amazing. I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we go on. But the Ministry Action Plan, this is a plan that we put together in Council on Ministries. And for years our Council on Ministries was kind of a rubber stamping group, but they are no longer that. They are a planning, moving, creating team. And so we are creating new ministries all the time. We're in the process of creating a task force that is a community involvement task force. You may be interested in doing that, being a part of that. We have put together a list of things that we would like that type of person to be, or a person on that team to be. Things like they're involved in the community, that they dream big, that they're not afraid of big projects, that kind of thing. But we want a team of people here at the church to look at every different opportunity that we have to be involved in the community. We ought not to have a parade in this town that we don't have a float in. We ought not to have committees in the community that we don't have representatives on. We just need to be a part of this community in every possible way that we can. Nancy's got Main Street covered, so everybody has to go through her shop. At least that's what she tells me. Yeah, I know I can't pass by the shop without her coming out and accosting me. So, and I have bought one thing, by the way. There, I keep looking, but is that best?
Nothing fits you.
Nothing fits. No, none of them are my color. So we finished our Council on Ministries meeting on Tuesday night, and John Erickson, who is the chair of that committee, and we were walking out, and he said, "That was the most dynamic meeting that I have been a part of in a long time. We need we need to just let people see that. And so I think maybe some Sunday, we just need to have our meeting in front of everybody and let everybody see what's going on. But it was bouncing ideas, and somebody would say, did you know this is happening, and we're doing this, and it was just incredible, and so much fun, and so energetic, and we did it in almost an hour, so pretty amazing. The number 6 is our 150th anniversary. Darlene Florence and Debbie Stansel are chairing that, and so if you want to know what's going on, wait a little bit, because they're getting ready to put their team of people together. If you're interested in doing that, talk to Debbie. She would love to hear about that. Darlene had to get her husband retired, and then she said
on this 20-day cruise.
Yeah, right. Now once they get back in town, we're off and running. But look at those dates, October 7 through 9, 2016. Write that down on your calendar. Make sure it's in there. Those are on every city calendar now, and so we're off and running with that. Number 7 is the master plan. And when last time I talked to you, I gave you the master plan and kind of shared that with you. And when I told you that we could do all of that for the mere price of $28 million, you all looked at me like he is nuts. What is he talking about? Well, what I want you to know is that this is possible. You know the old joke about how do you eat an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time. And what we have is what we have to do is we have to figure out what are the manageable chunks that we can do this in, and how are we going to go about doing this in a manner that enables us to go to the next step, to the next step, to the next step. The master plan is huge, but we didn't want to get so bogged down in the huge part of it that we couldn't figure out what that first chunk was. So we gathered together a group of leaders in the church. They came up with what the first chunk is, and that's the children's wing. I wanted it to be the offices. I don't understand. It's hurt me deeply that we would choose children over a nice new office for me, because my office was supposed to have a private bathroom in it. And I've been a minister 39 years now, and I've never had my own private bathroom. And what is even worse is that Rick's office now in Crowley has a private bathroom. And that's just not fair. But if you want to put children over my private bathroom, okay, go ahead. I do want you to know someone was caught carrying, because I got a box in the mail the other day, and it came from Craig Morris, who is the chair of the building team, and he wanted to make sure that I had my private bathroom in my office. And so I sent him an email in response that said, Craig Morris has been caught carrying. And you can read the rest of it if you're really brave. You can only imagine what that might be like. But anyway, the children's wing. I want to make sure that we take seriously that we closed down a preschool that was really important for us, and that the preschool is something that we need to make sure that we restart. That was an important part of this community. We've got a design for what we want that to look like, but we don't have a building we can put it in. Our building will not pass any of the modern codes that you have to start a preschool. So that's one of the reasons we need a children's wing. But also because as we grow with staff that are ready to grow our children's program, we need a space for them to be in and really to concentrate on children. Yeah,
what's the cost of the children's wing?
I don't have an exact cost, but it's going to be in the $7 million area. But let me tell you why that's a possibility. If you ask me, could we come up with $7 million to build a building, I'd tell you no. But remember, I also told you that we need to look at the properties that we own as assets. And how do we use the assets that we have as a congregation to further the name of Christ? And so we have 5 houses. We have the 2 houses that are on College. We have the 2 houses that we own on Ball Street. And we have another house that is in Colleyville that is the parsonage for the Heritage Campus. And then we have the Heritage Campus itself. You add all of those together, if you take those 5 houses and you take the Heritage property, that's probably worth somewhere between $4 and $5 million. Are we getting $4 or $5 million worth of ministry out of those locations? And the answer is no, we're not. So how do we best use those assets to further the name of Christ in this community? I think that we look at selling them and using that money in a more profitable way. So let me tell you what my thoughts are on that. And again, these are my thoughts, and we do have some teams of people talking about it, but you all know that I don't get to decide what we're going to do. This will go through the committees and so forth, and we will eventually have an all-church conference where we make the decision to do this together as a congregation. But these are the thoughts. Heritage Campus, first of all. That is, if you remember the history of that, Mentor's Chapel was on the property of the airport. It was one of the oldest churches in Tarrant County. We moved that when the airport went in. Couldn't have something on the airport like a church. They left the cemetery because they couldn't move that, but they moved it over to Heritage. Is it Avenue? Heritage Avenue?
Yes.
Avenue. And so they moved it over there, and that church has never really taken hold. I mean, if you just look at it as a viable congregation that is growing, that is increasing in number, that's ever really been able to truly make its mark in the community, it's just not done it. And I know that people who have been a part of that church love that church, and I understand that, and I don't want to discount what it's meant to them, but when over 30 or 40 years, you're unable to get more than 150 people in your church, there's something wrong with that picture. And it's either the wrong location or something's happening. And so, I think that we have found out, we've given that location the chance. Let's sell that property, use the $2.5 million that we could make off of that, and use that in another area where we dedicate some of that money to starting a new congregation that the conference wants to start somewhere around close to the Grapevine area where new houses are going up. That way we don't lose that connection with a new church that could really develop and do something major in the conference. But at the same time, that we don't just keep this piece of property that's not really being useful to us. For a long time I thought, how could we let that piece of property go, because it's right there next to the schools, and there are probably things we could do from there. But I just don't think that we have the history to show that there's something that we can do that's going to be nearly as profitable as moving to another location. So I would say that 1/3 of the money that we would get off of that should be used, we would hold it to start a new congregation. The other 2/3 would come to us to help us build the buildings, do the renovations, all of that we need to do on this location. The city has told us they would like to put back into residential hands those 2 pieces of property on College. I think that's an admirable thing to do. However, we have 2 ministries that are viable that are in those 2 locations we have to figure out what to do with. So we have the thrift shop, which we don't want to ever stop that ministry, and we have JFON in the Forbes house. So what do we do with those? Well, we have a plan to build a building over where the pumpkin patch used to be, but we'd rather not build it right away. I have a meeting with the mayor and with the city manager to talk with them about doing a long-term lease on the senior center. I don't think we can afford to buy that property. I don't think we can wait on buying that property. According to Bruno, they don't really know what they want to do with that piece of property, and different council people want to do different things with it. There's at least one council person, maybe two, that want to tear it down and build a garage there so that they can park more for Main Street. Bruno says they haven't done the study of that. They don't know if they need more downtown parking or not, and they don't know if that location would be the best or not. Plus, if you build a garage, it is really expensive parking. So it would cost them around $15,000 a space to build that parking lot. So he thinks that's not a good use of the property. But there are others that want to use that for an IT type building. They're going to be squabbling over that for a while. Like I said, we don't have time to wait for them to decide they want to sell it or not sell it or whatever. So I think they would be open to the possibility of us renting that. You know, we rent it now from them for Sunday mornings. You know how much we pay for that a year? Our rent on that for a year is $300. Pretty good deal, huh? So I think we ought to just, we'll give them another 100. But I think we could get a very good deal on that in a rental basis. We could move the thrift shop over there. Let the thrift shop be there until we're able to build the building that we want to build. Put JFON over there. There are things that we can do in that building and still have our Sunday school classes. That we have 5 Sunday school classes that are meeting over there right now. So I think that gives us the possibility to do the things we want to do there.
Isn't part of that property our property?
Well, none of it, just the parking that is beyond their parking. The one behind Will Hoyt's. The parking behind Will Hoyt's is our parking lot. But we also have a lease with the city, a long-term lease on sharing that. So we have a lot of cooperation with the city. It's the same thing with the Ball Street parking lot, the one that's way down there. We have an agreement with them on that. The other properties, for instance, the parsonage, Ed has just gotten an appraisal on that. It's $350,000 on that piece of property. We have appraisals on both of those. The Forbes house is $250,000. The thrift shop's $150,000. We don't know what the 2 pieces of property on Ball Street would be. We would not make one of those 2 pieces of property has a disabled man that lives there. We would not shoo him out. It's just when he no longer needs it, we would probably decide to sell that. But we could sell the other one. The other one's empty right now, and so we could look at that. So you get the idea of really using the assets in a different way. And I just don't think that they're doing what we would want them to do with the amount of money that we could really make a difference. Now let me give you another little caveat in that. We've talked to our architect and also capital funds consultant. The capital funds consultant, if you're looking at this is a $7 million project and we have $3 to $4 million already that we know that we have in assets, so that makes that very manageable. A $3 million, you did over $3 million in a debt reduction campaign when Ken first got here. Debt reduction campaigns are the hardest way to get money. Think about what you could do if you're talking about children's ministry and how important children are. That loosens pocketbooks a whole lot more than debt reduction, let me tell you. So a $3 million campaign would be more than doable by this congregation and make a huge difference in the ministry. But also let's think about what if we took, say, $250,000 of that and we did something before we ever started the building, and we wanted to make a real impact on the ministry here. What if we totally redid the inside of Founders Chapel and spent $250,000, $300,000 on that, did it with new lighting and new sound, and made it so that it could house both a traditional worship service and contemporary worship service, and all of a sudden the thing that we didn't think we would have for years in a contemporary worship service, which is our fastest growing worship service, that we wouldn't have that for years, we could have that very, very soon. Be able to house that in there and use that in a way that could really be great. And then we can help the congregation know what we're talking about. We're not talking about putting paint on walls. We're talking about really changing the way that we do ministry and the ability that we have to do ministry. And I think that would change the life of this church in a whole lot of ways. Bring young families back in. We've got the staff we need to bring young families in. Now we just need the buildings to put them in. We would also do some things. I'm looking at Pam over there. She coordinates a lot of the youth ministry. We need to redo some of our space for youth ministry. That would give us the ability to redo that as well, because we could get some of the offices out of the Family Life Center and redo some of that as we look more and more at this. You know, I could go on and forever on that. Any questions on any of that stuff? Let's go on with number 9, the Permanent Endowment Fund. We're up to $800,000, or close to it. I got a little overzealous. We had the meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we're more in the 750 range, but we're getting closer and closer to the $1 million goal that we had before we start using that for funding some of the repairs that we need to use that for over time. We have older buildings, and as I've said to you before, we're going to spend money on the buildings no matter what we do. We're either going to spend it on redoing the ones we've got or building new ones, and maybe some of both. But the endowment fund will enable us to take care of the buildings in a way that we haven't been able to before. Missional giving, that's still a very important part of who we are as a congregation, and there are very few congregations that can say that they gave $3 million to missional giving in the last 5 years. That's a pretty wonderful thing. And to know the faces and the people that's made a difference in their lives. It's not just kind of shoving money out there, but it is really making differences. And then in being the community church, and the last 2 lines of that I like are, we like being called the community church. We like best that it is people in the community that call us that. It's not us saying we're the community church like we're bragging about it. It's other people saying that's who you are as a congregation, and that's what it means to be in the same location for 150 years and really doing ministry in that way. Let me give you the couple of add-ons that I've got, because they have something to do with that whole community church idea, and that is we are in the process of starting what we're calling the Hispanic Ministry Institute, or Academy. We hadn't really named it quite yet. We'll figure out a cute name for it depending on what the letters spell, you know, that kind of thing. Anyway, in the next 10 years, there will be more Hispanic people in Texas than any other demographic. And the Methodist Church doesn't know how to do Hispanic ministry as a whole. One of the, and I just have to say, I don't think that there's a real commitment to it. I mean, I don't know that I should be quite that honest, but I think that what we've seen recently is that it doesn't seem that way. We've had 2 bilingual pastors that really have done a good job here. Amelia Beasley and Carlos Carriaga, and neither one of them are still in the conference. They didn't have places for either one of them in the conference. And it just shows that there's not a foresight in a way that they're trying to make Hispanic ministry happen. And I know they're frustrated. It's really hard to start a church with immigrant people because they don't have money. They don't. I mean, you know, it's just tough to do. And so, how do you go about doing that? Well, we need to start ministries and let those ministries then begin to create out of their foundation organically begin to start these churches. So we've already started to do that, and we've started to do that through some great work that Armando Alvarado has been doing. We've talked to the North Texas Conference, the Central Texas Conference, and also Perkins School of Theology. Armando's going to be talking with Bright Seminary as well at TCU. We've been working with the Texas Methodist Foundation. They're working on a grant for us right now. In fact, we have a meeting next week that we're meeting with the grant writer so that we can get that all done. We have a proposal that we're ready to do. And so we anticipate that by September we will have the beginnings of the Hispanic Ministry Institute, Academy, whatever. We're also getting together with the other church in Texas that's really doing good Hispanic ministry, and that is Alamo Heights in San Antonio. So we're going to be sharing ideas and see how we can work this. But we'll be bringing people in here to learn what it means to do ministry with Hispanic people, first generation, second generation, third generation Hispanic folks. And I can tell you, that's the future of the church in Texas, and if we don't grab hold of it, we're going to be behind the 8 ball in years to come. So that's one of the exciting things that I want to add to this is number 11. Number 12 is another thing that we are partnering with the police department and the Community Outreach Center at Mustang on Mustang Drive. And we are going to start a Community Outreach Center North, and we will do it out of this church. So we have a meeting next week. Do you think all I do is meet? I'm trying to get them around lunches, but I'm not being all that successful. But this is we're going to be meeting with Police Chief Eddie Salome and Colby Mallory, who is the director of the Mustang Outreach Center. And so we're going to talk about how it is that we can partner together to make this happen. They now have 45 students over at the after-school program at the Outreach Center now. We're going to start an Outreach Center here, and we hope to start with 50 kids. They have a long list of people who are on the waiting list that want to do this. Robin Ryan says that the two most difficult things that he's dealing with right now is kids that are coming in to school in kindergarten and first grade that are not on the same level. That we have some that are going in that have been in preschool that know how to read, and then you have others that don't even speak the language. And so by the time they're in third grade, they're dropping out. And Ed has a statistic.
It's a study that's gone around the nation that states will use the third grade reading failure rate to determine how many penitentiary cells they'll need in 15 years.
Oh.
So we need to be on the ball with this. And not only in after-school program, but also in preschool. So we want to develop a preschool that will enable us to reach kids who would not normally be able to go to preschool. And we also want to then have the other side of that, kind of the counterbalance to that, of how we're going to be involved in an after-school program that will help them as well. That's going to make a huge difference in this community. Colby, and you guys need to get to know Colby Mallory. He's just one of my favorite people. He's a church member here. He goes to the bilingual service. He's a preacher's kid, but he's a great guy. And you talk about a passionate, dedicated young man. I really think a lot of him. Anyway, he's got statistics on how the crime rate is down in that area of Grapevine because of the programs. So much of what they're already seeing as a result of what's happening out of the Outreach Center has really been helpful, and we can be a part of that in this church. These are the exciting things that are going on all the time. It's just amazing. I feel so blessed to be the pastor of a church that is creating new things, God calling people in new ways to go out and do ministry in whole different ways. I can't keep up. I mean, it's funny how people say, okay, now John, you got to catch a vision of this, and I can't catch a vision because everybody else got visions that are coming in and telling me about the visions. So we've got all these visions that are coming together. So my job is now to sift through and to discern what it is that we can do and how we can get there and what are the exciting new things, just like the Latvian Village. There were folks who were saying, now why are we going to have a fourth village? We have 3, isn't that enough? If you met those folks that were here during the Friends of Latvia, saw those pastors, saw that passion, saw the way that they are touching lives in this wonderful place in the world, and continue to struggle to help bring Christ to a basic atheistic society, you would say, my gosh, why weren't we doing that 20 years ago? You know? And so that's what's really exciting here, is seeing the response and the way that things are going. And tell them a little bit about where we are financially. It's our lay leader, if you didn't know that, Ed Crater, and he'll do the finance word.
Ken Hall is our finance committee chairman, but he has a day job, which I don't have anymore. So that's something that I really enjoy. One of the things that he's been telling people is that the response to our pledge campaign was really strong. We were a little concerned at the beginning of the year where January fell off our expectations. So the first quarter, we were about $28,000 as a deficit of expenditures over our revenues. Now that's better than what we were in the prior year. In the prior year, we were even worse off. But as we looked at how things were going in the first part of the quarter, we had a lot of discussion with people, we had a lot of discussion with the staff. They have been doing a great job at really watching their spending. And so they've responded, they have held off on the spending, they've reduced some of the spending that they've had. And we've also had people step up in the church when we've had special requests for things, that they funded those special requests. So for example, we had one item that was going to be a planned expenditure that the server and the church's computer had gone out. That was about an $8,000 item. We were struggling on the finance committee to figure out how we were going to do that. We had someone step forward and fund a new server for the church. We've also had people respond to the joint letter that went around to the Sunday school classes for the need on repairing the roof in the tunnel area here, as well as our elevator. And that's going very well to raise the money that we need to handle those repairs. So that's going on. I know the Seekers class is taking up a collection one more Sunday as part of that. So if you have any questions about that, you can see me afterwards. I'll be glad to talk to you about it. But we've had good response to those things as well. So as we get then into the second quarter, what we're seeing is that we're running about break even, which is excellent. That's really what we want to do. We don't really want to be in a profit setting mode on things. We want to be able to match what our spending is with what our gifts are coming in, and that has balanced out towards the end of the quarter. So March, for example, was about a $2,000 difference, so it was very flat. Our budget for the second quarter has a big deficit identified, and the way that we're going to overcome that is by having the revenue kind of brought back in to match up where we have the planned spending. Two things are going on with that. First of all, we're seeing our attendance come back up. John has been working hard over the last year with our staff and people in our church to try to get our attendance back up above a 1,000 level each week. And that's pretty much on track now to see that happening. I think John talked yesterday about the fact that before he retires, he wants to see us be consistently at a 1,500 people per week level. So I think that's something that all of you, as you're talking with people and sharing with them the types of things that we're really doing here in the church, invite them to come and join you in service so that we can keep those attendance numbers coming back up. Those attendance numbers will influence the amount of revenue that's coming in. And then the other thing we want to talk to you about is, as people are getting ready to travel during the summertime, if you're not on an auto pay arrangement for your pledge, please consider doing that. Because what happens during the summertime is people are out on vacation, those checks aren't coming in because they're not here to put it in the collection plate. And so during the summertime, we always have a real starvation on the cash that's coming into the church. And what we do with that then is we've had about $55,000 that was prepaid for all of the 2015 pledges. They actually paid that in 2014 as frankly, a tax planning thing. They prepaid the pledge, they took it on their tax return in 2014. Trudy holds those prepayments to basically bring them into the coffers during the summertime when we need to use that money. So we've been holding it already so far this year, and then as the summertime that cash need comes in, then that's when it's used. But if you are on an auto pay arrangement when you're traveling around and you're doing things with grandkids or whatever it is during the summertime, those amounts are still coming in even in your absence while you're traveling around. So if you're not doing that, please consider doing that. The other item that the Finance Committee wants to continually remind people about, on John's list or the staff's list of the top 10, we had that $3 million in missional giving over the last 5 years. The Finance Committee has been asking people as they make these special gifts to these different ministries and dedicated missions to consider offering about 10% of that to what they call Mission Central. If you think about our physical plant, if you think about the things that we're doing, we need the building here to be able to provide that infrastructure to do all these things. We house all of the food for weekend food. We house all of the storage and gifts and items for people that are taking things over to Kenya. We have group meetings here to plan out things we want to do with the villages. So the structure that we have here actually is part of that mission. So by giving 10% to Mission Central, it helps offset just the cost of keeping the lights on and doing the repairs that we need here. If you think of it with that $3 million that we gave to missional giving over the last 5 years, if we'd had Mission Central in place, that would have been about $300,000 that we could have used to help with repairs and things that we need to do here in our physical location. And that $300,000 would basically have us in a very strong financial position to expand more the ministries that we want to do. The other part I want to remind you about, the staff in this church has not had any raises in years. They have been working harder and harder as we ramp up the level of activities that we have, and we've not been financially able to give them a raise. And if we'd had that in place, we could have been able to help offset some of the increase in cost of living and recognition of the reward that they have for that part of it. So as you're doing that, please also consider Mission Central. So the bottom line is things are looking very bright. As John said, we've got a tremendous number of things that are going on. I want to share one last thing with you, and that is that the biggest thing I think I've heard over and over again in men's Bible studies that I've gone to and in other different discussion settings is we talk about the things that are happening with our church. John talked about the fact that when Ken came in here, it kind of lifted the lid off the spirit that had been kind of trapped in here and everybody went out and started doing things. And what I've heard people say is, Ken taught us how to be a church. And I think what we've done is we've continued to replicate that teaching and expand on it. And I think that's something that still has a lot of opportunity for us to grow as a church. Okay, thanks.
Thanks. All right, yeah, you can clap for that. Absolutely. Okay, so I don't think I have taken lunch yet, at least. Do we have any questions? Anything you want to say? Yes?
You mentioned starting a new congregation.
Yes.
How does that affect what we're trying to do here?
Well, it wouldn't be like next door. It would be in another community. It would not.
It would be this church.
I'm sorry?
Like a satellite, like Heritage. And
It could be I would guess it would actually take off and become its own church down the road. I mean, we wouldn't be funding it. One of the problems with Heritage, honestly, was they couldn't afford, when they came to us because they couldn't afford to keep their church going. What they wanted to do, bottom line, was they wanted to keep their church going, but us pay for it. And so we were losing $100,000 a year on supporting that congregation. In other words, the amount of money that the people there were putting into the budget of the church compared to what it was costing us to run that campus. And so we just couldn't afford it. I mean, that would not be the case here. We would be starting with the conference, starting another congregation that would eventually become its own. Now, we may look at that differently and see something that we want to do a little differently down the road. We'll see. I'm not sure where the Lord will guide us, but let me just give you another thought here. There are a lot of folks in this country right now that are not going to go to a church. They don't feel comfortable in a church. They're not going to feel comfortable in a church setting. But they'll go to things outside church. They'll go to spiritual conversations. They'll go to things that kind of don't look like church, but are churchy. And so maybe one of the things we need to do is to start that kind of ministry in the community where those that are not going to show up here might show up there. We've had a couple of attempts at things, and again, I don't want to be mean toward the conference, but we've started 2 new ministries that I think have been sad commentaries on the way we do things in the Methodist Church. One is 1709, which is a part of what they were trying to start out of White's Chapel. It was going to be a different type of church. It was going to be avant-garde and really unusual and really talk to people of younger ages. They were going to meet outside the church. Well, they never did. They are meeting, and well, actually they're closing it down now, but they were meeting at White's Chapel. It had become just another church service, and they had 20 people showing up. And they gave up on it. We have another one that we started on West 7th Street in Fort Worth, where all those new cool condos and all the new neat restaurants and all that are going up. And now they're meeting at our most traditional Methodist church, First Fort Worth. It just makes no sense. And we need something that's going to commit to people that think differently, act differently, but really want to be spiritual people. They just don't want to do it in the way that we've done it for 150 years. And I think that we might be able to do that. We've got, Jen Pick, who's going to be the associate pastor, is of that age range, is in tune with that. We also have Joy Dister, who is a member of our congregation that is now out and about. She's doing campus ministry. She would love to do her internship here. What if we were able to start something out of this church that Jen and Joy did together, that they see and have a vision of and can touch young people? I was over at Fidelity with my sister in Dallas, going through her finances and so forth, and trying to get everything set after my brother-in-law passed away. And the young woman and the young man that were helping us in there, it came out that I was a minister, and she said, "Oh, where are you a minister?" I said, "In Grapevine." She said, "I live in Grapevine." And I said, "Well, I'm at First Methodist Church." And she said, "I've been looking for a church." And I said, "Well, why don't you come to us?" She said, "No, I don't really want to go to that kind of church." And the guy that was there said, "I live in Grapevine. I don't want to go there either." And I said, "What do you want to go to?" And they said, "There's not really anything there. We want to be in a community of people our age. We want to find a group that want to talk about the things that are issues for us." And that's just not happening. And I think we need to start looking at how we can make some of those things happen that are different than what we're doing now. But so I don't know. We'll see where the Lord leads us in that one. Have for us, so that you can guide us in the ways that we need to be your disciples, and strengthening the ministry in your name throughout this community. We pray this in the name of Christ our Lord.